بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
Assalamu alaikum. It is Thursday, the 8th of September 2022. And in our series, Reflections on the Holy Quran, this is broadcast number 358. For some reason, it incorrectly says 346. It's 358. And it also has the incorrect date on there. The date is the date is correct. Before we start, a short while ago, BBC announced that Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II had passed away this afternoon. She had been the Queen, the monarch, for the last 70 years, not only of the United Kingdom, but also 15 other countries, such as Canada and Australia and New Zealand, and many others. And she served particularly the United Kingdom with the utmost dedication and loyalty. Our heartfelt sympathies go out and our condolences to her family, King Charles, and his sister and brothers and other members of the family. And we pray that Allah gives them patience to bear this loss. This is a time that we all have to suffer, regardless of our nationality or religion or sect or caste or creed. We have to bear the loss of our dear ones. And we have to prepare for that day. Nevertheless, the shock and the pain when the time comes is still the same. However much you might try and prepare yourself for it. So, as I said, our heartfelt grievances for the royal family. These days we are discussing words used in chapter 2, verse 104 of the Holy Quran, and this is the 6th broadcast in that series. And the verse that we are discussing we'll come to in a minute. Just to remind you that these broadcasts are brought to you by LASER, the Lahore Ahmadiyya School of Education in Religion, which is a branch of the Ahmadiyya movement. Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Sahib Rahmatullah Alayh founded the Ahmadiyya movement, and he taught that whereas others believe that a prophet can come after the Holy Prophet Muhammad, this cannot be correct, because the Holy Quran calls him Khatmun Nabiyyin, and he explained this term by saying La Nabi Abadi, there is no prophet after me. And when people ask what will happen if the Ummah goes astray, the Holy Prophet said that God will raise reformers, Mujaddideen. And he was one such Mujaddid in a long chain. His distinction was that he had explained that the Mahdi and Messiah spoken of in the Holy Quran are not two different and separate people, but the titles of one of the Mujaddideen, and the titles actually applied to him. And upon this, people started calling Ahmadis Kafirs and heretics and so on. And Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Sahib pointed out that the Holy Prophet had said that if one reciter of the Kalima calls another reciter of the Kalima a Kafir, then it is the caller to whom the verdict applies. So we mustn't be hasty in judging others. And Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad taught that whereas others believe that the fundamental source of our knowledge is Hadith, this is not correct, because Quran is the word of Allah. So surely that is the first source that we should turn to. Next, the Sunnah, the actions of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Hadith comes last amongst these. And then it has to be checked to make sure that it doesn't contradict the Holy Quran and other things. He also taught that some people believe that some prophetic revelation is missing from the Holy Quran, and some of the Quranic commandments have been abrogated. But he said God revealed the Quran, and he says that he will protect it. So this is not right. And of course, he said that jihad is a fundamental duty of every Muslim, but as defined by the Holy Prophet Muhammad, who, when returning from fighting, said that Muslims are returning from the minor to the major jihad. And he defined the major jihad as jihad bin nafs, a struggle with your own souls. So let us turn to the Holy Quran. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تقولوا راعنا وقولوا انظرنا واسمعوا وللكافرين عذاب أليم. Today we're going to talk about the word wasma'u. This is actually, there are three segments of this verse. Wa at the beginning is a conjunction and what I call the connecting word. Asma'u is the verb, the doing word, as I was taught when I went to secondary school. And wa at the end is a pronoun. Because as I explained previously, Arabic has a system where the noun, its ending is the pronoun. Kitab, kitabi. Kitab, book. Kitabi, my book. And in the same way, the verbs have the same thing. So whatever the verb is, whatever is being done, the pronoun is added at the end to show who is doing whatever it is. So it's the root, the triliteral root is Sin, Mim, Ain, and it occurs in the Holy Quran 185 times in 10 different forms. 78 times we find Sami'a, and 47 times Sami, and 22 times Sam'a, and 16 times Istama, and 13 times Asma'a, and the rest then once or twice. And it's everything to do with hearing, listening, hearing. So we heard and hear, you will certainly hear, and so on, are all the meanings of the various usages. So a sam'u is the ability, the faculty to be able to hear. And obviously we do that through our eardrum. And it also means to listen or to hear, or and sometimes it also stands for the instrument of hearing, that is to say, the ear itself. As we find in chapter 2, verse 7, خَتَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَىٰ قُلُوبِهِمْ وَعَلَىٰ سَمْعِهِمْ. And God has sealed their hearts and their ears. سَمْعِهِمْ. So, and sometimes the word is used as in the same way as the root, and that means to hear. Innahum anis sam'i lama'zulun. Chapter 26, verse 212. That they were forced to move away from the place where heavenly revelation, heavenly conversation took place. And then in chapter 50, verse 37, أَوْ أَلْقَى السَّمْعَ وَهُوَ شَهِيدٌ. And he listens attentively. That means he concentrates. And sometimes sam'un is used to mean understanding, and sometimes also obedience. For example, the Holy Quran says, وَإِذَا تُتْلَى عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتُنَا قَالُوا قَدْ سَمِعْنَا لَوْ نَشَاءُ لَقُلْنَا. जब उनको हमारी आयतें पढ़ के सुनाई, sorry, I switched into Urdu for some reason, and when our verses are related to them, they say, yeah, well, okay, we've heard, and if we wanted to, we would have produced something better than this. And in the same way, Samikna wa Athayna, chapter 2, verse 93. We've heard, but we don't accept. So that means that although we know what you're saying, we are not going to obey it. On the other hand, we have chapter 2, verse 285 from the believers. Sami'na wa ata'na. We hear and we obey. Sami'na. Now that doesn't mean that, you've just heard and that's it. It means you heard, yes, but you understood what it is. Because if you're going to obey it, we hear and we obey. But if you're going to obey something, then you need to know what it is that you heard. And if you don't know, if you don't understand what you heard, then how will you obey it? So here, Sami'na means we understand. We know what you want us to do. And then in chapter 8, verse 21, لا تكونوا كالذين قالوا سمعنا وهم لا يسمعون. And don't become like the people who say, we've heard, but in fact, they don't. They don't hear. So hear here is used in with two meanings. One is that they've heard, and second time, that they don't obey. It's like any language. It's like English. You have something similar, don't you? A parent or school teacher or whatever, they are angry with someone. They say, why don't you listen to me? Can't you hear me? Obviously, the kid is standing in front of them, unless they're deaf. They are listening to them. They are hearing them. The point of using hearing here is, why don't you obey me? Why don't you do what I'm telling you to do? So it's important to understand that the context, so that you get the correct meaning. And I mean, the Holy Quran uses human senses of hearing and seeing and feeling, because what happens is that you have the sense of hearing and seeing, and from those two senses, information is taken to the mind. And the word heart is used, but it means, I think, the mind. So that the mind can analyze that information and learn and come to some conclusions. And the Holy Quran, in fact, insists that people do this, and doesn't hold those who don't do it in very high regard. And the point the Holy Quran is making this, yes, you learn from these sources, but your judgment about what you hear and see and so on is clouded. Why? Because you analyze that information emotionally, not dispassionately. And that is what causes problems because, you know, uh, your judgments are based on emotions. Maybe you're angry, maybe it's some other emotion. It's like mothers. They always try and justify their kids. Their children can't do anything wrong. Why? Because it's not rational, dispassionate decision. It's based on emotion. They love their kids and so on. And the difficulty then happens is if your decisions are based on emotions, then other people can't follow you and understand you. And this is why, in fact, consumption of drugs and so on, drinking is banned by Islam because it clouds your judgment. And the cloudy judgment, you can't make correct decisions. And this is where God's revelation or Wahi comes in. That whatever information you've gathered and you want to analyze, do it in the light of Wahi, God's revelation. Because God's revelation is dispassionate. The example I gave earlier. It's not a mother trying to justify whatever the kid is doing. The revelation, the Holy Quran, is above and beyond that. It's not going to do that. It's going to talk about right and wrong and this kind of thing. So, with that plea that when you consider things, do so dispassionately and keep your emotions under control because they will lead you astray. With the prayer that God keeps the whole of humanity safe and sound and free from harm, and with a request for your prayers for Pakistan and people of Pakistan at this trying and difficult time, I take my leave of you. Assalamu alaikum, Khuda Hafiz, and goodbye.